We need to prepare because our power grid, it is going down. It's going to crash. It is inevitable, 100% guaranteed. This is not clickbait. Now, how it happens, maybe it's an EMP, maybe it's a cyber attack, maybe it's a coronal mass ejection. That remains to be seen. But when it goes down, understand we're in big trouble because people say all the time, oh, you know what? Mankind went for thousands of years without power. That's true, but not modern mankind. 90% of the population will die when this event occurs. But you know what? You don't need to. This video is going to give you 13 strategies, tips and tricks, things you need to know to prepare for that day because the grid is going down. And of course, the last one's the best one, so stay through all of it and take lots of notes. Number one, lighting. Lighting can be anything from solar lights outside to just simple lights that you have in your house. Now, people say all the time, candles. I have lots of candles. But candles, up until modern times, have actually been one of the leading causes of fires in homes. I would think twice about that. And lanterns, too. I mean, not that they'll start fires, but you have to have fuel for the lanterns. Eventually, that fuel will go. Even flashlights that need batteries. Batteries will only go so long. And we don't know how long the grid's going to be down. Probably years. So I always recommend getting things like, for example, solar rechargeable flashlights. I mean, it's not solar, but I use my solar generator to recharge it. That way I never need batteries. For the kids, I have squeeze lights, which are always good. Fantastic little devices. Or, of course, you can actually use the solar-powered crank flashlights. These work fantastic. But either way, make sure you have lots of lights. I actually recommend get a diversity of all kinds of different lights to be prepared for this because it's going to be pretty dark. Number two, heating and cooling. Winter is coming. Have you thought about this? Let's first talk about heating because that will save more lives than cooling will. Your furnace in your house, doesn't matter if it uses propane or natural gas. Let's pretend that propane and natural gas continues to come into your home. Well, guess what? Your furnace requires power. You can actually have an electrician hook up a cord for it so you can plug it in the wall. That way, when the time comes, if you have a solar generator, you can plug it in the solar generator and provide heat for your house. But again, we're talking about natural gas. We're talking about propane. Eventually, that will stop and we need the fuel. Some people have pellet stoves. They are fantastic, aren't they? Where are you going to get the pellets? Because eventually that will run out too. And also they need power. 3, propane and kerosene. Buddy heaters are fantastic. I love my kerosene heater. Same thing with those two. Eventually the kerosene and the propane will disappear. The best way to go is a wood stove and or fireplace. Wood stoves work better. They put more of the heat into the house. Fireplaces are good. If you actually have an insert for it, it works better. And wood, you can find wood kind of anywhere. We've seen in third world countries when they collapse, if we have like a financial economic collapse, they'll start burning furniture. It's better to have sitting on the floor and keeping warm so you won't die. So having all kinds of things like that too is very good. You want to make sure you have stuff. Not only that, but have a fan. Blowing around the heat is a very good thing. I know for a lot of people on wood stoves, they actually have the fan that's actually powered by the wood stove. At the very least, that'd be a good thing to have. All right, cooling. Cooling, not as important, and I know people down south are arguing with that one right now, and I understand. But when it comes to cooling, there's lots of things you can do. You can get a portable air conditioner or a window air conditioner and run it on your solar generator, or even a gas generator, obviously. Gas will run it eventually. But they really suck power. I mean, a lot of power. If you have a solar generator, it'll only make your window unit run for like maybe a couple hours at the most. Out west is nice because if you have a dry, arid environment, you can use an evaporative cooler, or we should just call them swamp coolers. And all it is simply a pump with a fan. It pumps water and the water evaporates, cooling off your house. I love these things, by the way. And if you don't have an evaporative cooler and you live in an arid environment, you can do the same thing by simply just wetting a towel or washcloth, put it on your neck. And as it evaporates, it takes the heat away from your body and cools you off. Very, very, very helpful. I like solar fans too. I've modeled a couple different ones on the channel. When it comes to solar fans, this is an inexpensive one that's very powerful. I'll link all these below if you want to pick them up. I have another one from Itehil that's actually a much bigger fan, puts out a lot more air. But I find even at my desk, I use this one right here, even though I could use a regular fan. But being solar powered, and man, the battery on this lasts forever. It just keeps going. So really good stuff. The last thing I want to talk about when it comes to heating and cooling, another option you have too is the EcoFlow. I love their solar generators and their systems, by the way. It's an ecosystem. And I have the EcoFlow Wave 2, which I've modeled before. And the EcoFlow Wave 2 is literally a portable, battery-powered air conditioner or heater. And anybody who's bought these will tell you it's the coolest thing, no pun intended, the coolest thing in the world to have, to be able to, change your climate, control your climate, even if it's a small room inside your house. Number 3, cooking. In our house, we have a gas range oven. And when we use propane for it, by the way, and for some reason, if the power goes out and I don't have our house hooked up to like our solar generators or a gas generator, you can still use it. Not all units you can do this, but most of them, all you have to do is manually light it with a lighter. But again, same thing, eventually the propane's going to run out. And granted, I don't know about you, but I have a huge propane tank outside, and if I'm using just my stove, it lasts for years and years. Really good stuff. But when you look at all the different types of propane grills and stuff, maybe you have a grill, maybe you have a butane stove, maybe you're a backpack, you have an alcohol stove, you do have to worry about all those things. The fuel will eventually run out. And of course, that is problematic. Wood stoves, again, are a really good thing to go with. I have my wood stove to heat the house. We can warm things up on it. It's not the best for cooking. If you actually have like one of those pots that you put inside of it, with a lid on it right now, it escapes my mind what they're called. You can cook stuff with it too. It's really great. But there's lots of different ways you can cook. For example, I love my Biolite. It's a little portable battery-powered rocket stove, but the battery's rechargeable. In fact, when the fire gets going with it, the batteries recharge on it, and being a rocket stove, it works amazingly well. But there's lots of little types of stoves you can do. People make their own stoves using cinder blocks for rocket stoves. You could even make a campfire in your backyard. But all of those have one thing in common: the smells. Really good smells, by the way, and that likes to attract people, especially if you're in a situation where, you know what, I need to be able to prepare my food and not get attacked or overrun. Solar cookers, on that mind, are fantastic. Solar ovens, for example, better in sunny locations. The more sun you have, the better it works. But they will actually kind of like bake the food, which decreases the smells drastically. And it's solar powered. You don't have to worry about fuel for that. All right. On top of all that, besides cooking, just remember to include manual kitchen appliances. We have a manual grain mill for wheat berries. We have manual mixers. And of course, don't forget the ever impossible, the manual can opener. Number 4, refrigeration. Do not downplay refrigeration, by the way. It has literally changed mankind because of food preservation. Less food spoilage, less food poisoning. People won't starve and get poisoned as often because of refrigeration. And since we see refrigeration even going into third world countries, the life expectancies of those third world countries are also increasing. Really good. What do you do? Because honestly, even if you have a solar generator, your big fridge in your house does require a lot of power. There's a few things you can do. You can actually make a Zier pot. Look it up. They're nice. They're little evaporative coolers, again, work in arid environments, but you have to continuously maintain it. You don't just make it go and off you go. I like solar generators, and I like having smaller fridges. I also have one of those cooler fridges. It's from a company called NewAir. I'll link it below, where literally it's like a big cooler, but it's a refrigerator freezer that works on 12 volts. And I'm telling you, with a solar panel, it is a refrigerator freezer. It's not like one of those little dinky ones you put in your car and suddenly it doesn't keep things cold or warm. It does. It is a fantastic unit. Other things you can do too, we talked about solar generators. When it comes to refrigerator freezers, I love to take our chest freezer, hook up solar panels to it, our solar generator to it, and it'll make our chest freezer go indefinitely. Now, granted, that's not refrigeration, but you can kind of use it as refrigeration if you want to. But food preservation, obviously, is what you're going to be shooting for, because you want to make sure that if you're shooting for food in your backyard, like a deer, you're not going to eat that deer in one night. And so therefore, putting it in a freezer would help out tremendously. Now, you can go to the old school methods of actual food preservation. You can learn to salt or smoke your food. Not to mention canning your food is a fantastic way too. I highly recommend, out of all the different ways to prepare and preserve food, canning is the way to go. Number 5, water. In a major grid down situation, your water will disappear. Now, it doesn't matter if you're on city water, well water, no power, you're not going to have water coming. If you look at a grid down situation and you're in a city, quickly fill up your tubs and basins, but that's only just a quick Band-Aid. You need to find a way to replenish the water, and replenishment is absolute key. Rainwater catchment is probably the most logical way. Catch it and keep renewing it. You'll eventually have rain coming down, and that's great, but just understand you still need a water filter. As the rain comes down, it filters the nastiness out of the sky right into your drinking glass. Think about that. We do the same thing with snow. We've had our power out here in Michigan numerous times, and we'll literally collect snow and put it on our wood stove and make nice fresh water from it, but filter it out. Same thing if you have a stream nearby. Like we have a natural spring on our house, on our property, that goes down through our property. And if I tap it from that creek, I'm probably still going to filter it out, because any type of contaminants will certainly make you sick, and it dehydrates you when you're sick and makes you need even more water, and it cascades. A well is the much better choice in these situations, because the ground does a very good job of filtering out most stuff. Not everything. If you're worried about that, then filter out your well water as well. But our well is super deep, and we actually have to have 240 volts to pull the water up. So therefore, we have to have a pretty hefty generator or solar generators to make that happen. Maybe at your place, you can actually dig a shallow well, which would be a lot better. But for us, if I use our solar generators, we have to basically ration the water. We can get water for maybe like 2 hours a day. Then not bad. Enough to collect our basins, fill them up, and get quick showers and everything, and off we go. But with that, make sure you have plenty of water because obviously it's so vital. You will die a very painful death, by the way, if you don't replenish it. Number 6, personal hygiene. Like I mentioned, we can actually get showers over a couple hours a day, which is good, but you don't necessarily have to. You can do as what we jokingly in our family call a French bath, get a washcloth and just wipe your body down, do it a couple times. We had to do this in the military sometimes. In the military, by the way, we had Gold Bond medicated powder. After you wipe yourself down, then you splash yourself with that powder. You feel like you literally got a shower. You feel like $1,000,000. I know a lot of people things like things like baby wipes and stuff, and that's fine. But just understand, just like the fuels and everything, they're going to run out. And if that happens, obviously you can't replenish it. You need to be able to have lots of things to make it so you can get showers. That includes obviously soap. Even if it's just you stock up on a ridiculous amount of bar soap, you'll be much better off. If you want to make your own soap, obviously, you can do it simply using rendered animal fat and the ash from your wood stove. Make your own soap, but that's a different video in a different time. Number 7, sanitation. And you're thinking, oh, I have water, my toilet still works. That's great, and it does. But if you're on some type of city or town sewage system, sewage will often back up into your houses if your house is low enough, because the sewage treatment plants rely on pumps to pump it away from your house. And if for some reason that power grid goes down for a long period of time, those pumps don't work, sewage is going to start backing up into your home. How disgusting. I've modeled before, and I'll link it below, a little plug that you can put in there. It's an air plug. You put it, there's one drain going from your house. You put that plug in and inflate it. It'll stop the sewage from coming back in. Very important. But understand that a lot of people won't have a toilet. You won't have the option, or possibly, by the way, if you have that plug, your toilet's not going to be working for you anymore. It'll work, but your own sewage will start backing up in your house if that's the point. So you need to figure something out. A lot of people like compost toilets, where you poo like even in simply just a bucket, and then you put either dirt or, if you have it, sawdust. You're probably not going to have a lot of sawdust on top of that. It keeps the smell down. Then eventually you go dump the bucket like in the back of your neighbor's yard or something, and you keep doing that. Some people will dig an outhouse, obviously. That can only last so long. You have to do a lot of work into that. Simply digging a cat hole is an option. In other words, you dig a hole, know where that hole's at, poo in that hole, then cover it back up, and just refrain from digging in that same hole, because obviously that'd be a bad experience. But you do have to worry about sanitation, and this is some means you need to do it. Number 8, communication. Of course, you will not be able to depend on your cell phone, or, by the way, satellite phones. Depending on the situation, people think, oh, the satellites will still work. Not in a major like CME or EMP event. Certainly not. So what can you do? I like the Baofeng radios. In fact, I'll pull mine right here. I always keep mine on charge. You can use it for all kinds of things, connecting with your neighbors, talking with your friends and family. You can listen to weather stuff. You can even actually chime into like local police and fire departments. Granted, in crap hits the fan, they're not going to probably do anything to you, but normal times it's illegal. You can't do it. Unless it's an emergency, by the way. Even in peaceful times, if you have an actual emergency, you can actually still tap into those channels and talk with them. But having this to talk with each other is good. Walkie-talkies, CBs, all those things work really well. Just know your distances. If you have a neighbor down the street you want to talk to, test it out first before you wait for that time. Also connecting with the outside world. Like right here, you can see I have my American Reserves radio. Having a solar radio or a crank radio is a really good thing. Fantastic. Cranking it is a drag. So I would recommend, again, if you have a solar generator, that'll significantly help. It's that way you can keep it powered instead of always having to crank the thing to keep it going. But being connected to the outside world, either talking to people or at least just listening to news and weather, is worth its weight in gold. Number 9, money. In a grid down situation, the banks will be down. The ATMs will be down. Literally, your economy, the entire United States or whatever country you live in, economy will be down also. So in that situation, bartering is what it comes down to. Barter what people need. You can look at simply food and water, any type of medical supplies, etc. Anything people use, even vices, is good. And you can actually barter in denominational stuff. Like I've modeled in the past, like GoldBacks or any type of like precious metals. In those situations, people say all the time, though, you can't eat gold, and that's true. Having things that people really need is the better thing to barter with. Number 10, emergency services. Depending on how long the grid is down or the extent of the catastrophe, you may not have any emergency services. Think about this. The police, whatever police are there instead of actually at home taking care of the family, are going to be overrun with problems. We'll get to that to the very last item in a minute, because that's the most dangerous thing we have to be able to overcome. Your house is on fire. You can't depend on the fire department coming. You have a medical emergency. Ambulances, hospitals may not be able to help you out. Even their supplies will be diminished. So whatever you have in those areas, maybe you have a medical condition, or maybe you possibly have a house fire, stock up on fire extinguishers, stock up on your medical supplies. You need to stock up on things way ahead of time. Take some course, take an EMT course. They're relatively inexpensive, and man, they're very thorough in giving you a very quick information all about the human body. So you have to expect those things will be gone, and you have to take these matters into your own hands. Number 11, entertainment. Keeping sane is vital. People overlook this and think, I don't have time to play cards, whatever. Oh, yes, you do. You need to. You need to have a chance to unwind, especially if you have kids. Even if it's simply just having a deck of cards for us, or possibly you're going to have some book to read, have some things for them like crayons, some coloring books, some board games, anything to keep sanity going. Even crafts too. If you know how to crochet or knit, it's perfect. It gives you something to do, takes your mind off everything going outside, and you can make yourself a new apocalypse sweater. 12 survival guides. In case you didn't know it, the grid is going down. No internet, no resources, no Goshen prepping, or any of your favorite channels you watch. All that information and how-tos will be gone. So hopefully you take notes. Hopefully you've been taking notes in this video. So have whatever survival guide you need. All throughout my history of this channel, I've talked about so many different guides. I'll probably make a nice extensive library of what I have to in the future again. But make sure you have lots of these guides, so that way when the time does happen, you can open up a book and say, oh, this is how I do whatever you need to do. And 13, the most important, self-defense. The power goes out. The grid goes down. It doesn't even have to be long. We've seen, historically speaking, the power is out in some places like New York City in the 70s for one day. And the violence erupted. What's it going to be like when the entire national grid goes down? When grocery stores no longer have food? When there's no longer gasoline for your car? It is going to be chaos. It's going to be starvation. And all that's going to lead through violence. And that literally is the number one thing, by the way, that causes major violence in cities is starvation. I'm not talking about necessarily in America, because in America we were having it really good. But around the world, every time you see third world countries, the food starts plummeting, out comes the violence. And I'm not kidding you. History has shown that because of this grid going down in America, that we're looking at major catastrophes. And again, this is where the experts agree that 90% of the people in this country will die. Studies show that they'll die within 2 weeks or a month. Some studies say up to 6 months. But either way, you must be able to protect yourself. You must be able to protect you and your family. This is the most important, because you can stockpile if you want to. I've got lots of food and card games and all these things, solar generators. But if people's coming to your house, taking it and killing you, then what's the point of prepping and stockpiling? I always talk about getting in shape too. Martial arts, it only helps so much. But obviously, training in weapons is a very good thing. Training is the key, by the way, not just holding on to those. But starvation is that number one cause to unrest. And when our grid goes down, unrest will happen. So 13 things, my friends, that you need to prepare and be ready for. What would you add to the list? Or, better yet, tell me some things that you've actually prepped recently in these areas to be ready for the grid to go down. Because I'll say it again, this is not hyperbole. The grid is going to go down. It's just a matter of time.